Hello and welcome. My name is Vanessa Massey and I am the owner and operator of Right Time Resume Service. This video is the fourth in my basic resume writing video series. This video will cover content of a resume. If you haven't watched the previous three videos, I would suggest you do that. Otherwise, you're going to be lost. This video builds on the previous three. What we'll be talking about, we've covered the purpose of a resume and how to gather your information for a resume in the first video. We covered the types of resumes and parts of a resume in the second video. And in the third video, we covered formatting a resume. In this video, we'll be covering the content of a resume, so let's get started. Very first thing that's on here is don't lie, and it's exclamation mark and bolded in red for a reason. In addition to the fact that it's just wrong to lie on your resume, there are consequences to lying on your resume. If you are found to have lied on a resume, you can be terminated. It has happened in the past. It will happen in the future because people will lie. But do you really want to jeopardize a position you've worked to get that you like because of a few bullet points on your resume? And it's not necessarily just over exaggerating your skills or your experience. It can actually be by not telling all of your credentials. For example, I know of a person who had received a master's degree and they were having a very hard time getting a position, and a lot of the times they were being told it was because they were overqualified, so they took the master's degree off of their resume. They got a position, they really liked it, and a supervisor came along a few years later, and for whatever reason that supervisor didn't quite get along with the person. So when the supervisor found out that that person had intentionally left off their education in order to get the job because they weren't considered overqualified because the master's degree didn't show up, they terminated them for lying on your resume. So it's very important that you don't lie. Now, the second bullet talks about assembling a master resume. And what I mean by a master resume is this. Generally, the resume that you send to employers is going to be one page, possibly two if you have the work history to warrant a second page. Now, when I say the work history, what I mean is if you've worked 6 jobs in 10 years, but they're all in the same industry, same job, same field, and all you're doing is repeating the bullets over and over again on each position, that does not warrant 2 pages of a resume. You actually don't want to repeat bullets at all. The employer doesn't need to know you've done this position, this job, or this skill, or this task 3 or 4 times. They just need to know that you know how to do it. So if that was the case, you would be able to combine things in order to get everything on one page. However, if in 10 years you have held managerial positions or you have held positions where you have done a lot, then you may justify 2 pages. But be sure you're not repeating anything. Be sure that what you're putting on the resume is relevant to the position you're applying for, because a lot of times you can get your resume down to 1 page that way. But as I said, 2 pages is not a deal breaker. Just make sure that it is relevant content that you're putting in your resume if you're going to make it 2 pages. Now, if you have a resume and you've got 2 bullets on a second page or 2 lines of text on a second page, you don't want a second page just for 2 or 3 lines of text. If you go back and watch the third video, the video previous to this one, I talked about some tips on formatting your resume to kind of get those lines up on the first page. But a master resume, you can make the master resume as long as you want. You can make it 4 pages, 5 pages, 6 pages, however, because what you'll do is for each position, you'll list everything that you did. And then you will pick and choose off of that resume to create the optimal resume to send out to an employer. You will not be sending your master resume to an employer. It is a tool so that you're not having to create your resume from scratch every single time you apply and you customize a resume. Now, we're going to talk about keeping your contact information current. This means telephone number, email address primarily. You want to make sure that if your email address changes, that you change it on your resume and you change it anywhere that you have your resume listed, any websites. If your cell phone number, same thing. Change it on your resume, change it any place that you've got it listed. If you have professional websites that you have profiles on, make sure that the URLs, if you're putting them on your resume, that you are keeping everything up to date, and make sure that the link works. The worst thing in the world is to put a link for, say, the website LinkedIn, and then if the employer tries to use it, it doesn't work. So make sure that all of your links work, make sure your telephone number is current, and make sure your email is current. Next bullet, keeping your resume relevant and current. All that means is even if you are perfectly happy where you're at and you don't plan on changing positions, if you are put in charge of a project or you're learning new skills or you learn a new program, go home and update your resume while it's still fresh in your mind, where you can write it correctly on your resume, because you never know when that dream job will come along and you will need your resume to be current immediately, not 2 days from now when you have time. Some of the things to not include: don't include personal information. If you're married, if you're single, if your religious orientation, your sexual orientation, if you have children, if they cannot legally ask you by law, it should not go on your resume. Anything personal information like that should not go on your resume. Your resume is a snapshot of your professional life, not your personal life. Don't include salary information. If an employer wants that information, 9 times out of 10, they will ask you to include a cover letter, and you would put your salary information in the cover letter. But even more often, an employer usually doesn't broach the subject of salary until they have interviewed you. Don't bring up money until they do. And lastly, don't put references available upon request. That is simply taking up valuable real estate on your resume that you could use for something else. So an employer knows if they want your references, you will supply them. You don't need to put it on your resume. Plus, it makes your resume look dated. We're going to talk about some verbiage. First, we're going to talk about overused phrases. Self-motivated, team player, duties included, responsible for. Over, insert number of years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years experience. Proven track record, hardworking, various, energetic. What do all those phrases have in common? Answer: they're general. These phrases don't tell an employer anything about what you can do and what you can do for their company. They're self-motivated. What really and truly does that tell an employer? Does it tell an employer about your skills? Does it tell an employer about projects that you've handled? Does it tell an employer about employees that you've supervised? It doesn't tell them anything. It's too general. Now, that being said, I will tell you this. If you are looking at a job listing, or you're talking to a network connection, and they use these types of phrases in relation to a position they're hoping to fill, then they become what we call keywords. You want keywords on your resume for a couple of reasons. One, the employer obviously considers these traits important, or they wouldn't put them in an ad, or they wouldn't talk to you about them. Two, many employers use software to scan resumes. HR departments are being downsized, and they're handling hundreds and hundreds of resumes. So they have to have a way to narrow the field down. And a lot of times what they do is they will scan resumes for keywords or words related to the keywords that they're looking for the skills they're looking for. And if the resume doesn't have those keywords, it'll kick it out, and it won't actually even get to an actual human being to look at. Then they take the smaller pile and they go through it. So you want to make sure that your resume is matching the keywords in a job ad. Now, that being said, make sure that you put those keywords in your resume correctly. You want to make sure that it fits within the context of your resume. Now we're going to talk about action verbs. Action verbs absolutely belong on your resume. Action verbs give a pop to your resume. You can say monthly reports, did monthly reports. Or you can say created and analyzed monthly reports for board meetings. What sounds better, monthly reports or created and analyzed monthly reports? That's the type of thing you want to say. For example, corresponded. You could say customer letters. Or you could say corresponded with customers to ensure customer satisfaction and prompt delivery of products. There's ways to make the same thing sound so much better. This list of action verbs is by no means exhaustive. It's not complete. If you Google action verbs for a resume, you will come up with pages and pages of action words broken down by things like communication, leadership, technical skills. So I encourage you to utilize action verbs in your resume. And just like I told you the previous slide about the overused phrases, that's not a complete list either. So do some research. See what you can use, see what you don't want to use. But I absolutely encourage using action verbs. That ends this video for the content of a resume. I encourage you to watch the previous videos so that you get a full idea of the resume writing process, a basic resume writing process. In addition to these videos, I have videos on using LinkedIn and Indeed.com, both on the desktop and on the mobile applications. I have a cover letter video as well. And I also will be creating other videos showing you some tools that you can use to keep your job search organized. Because that is a real battle when you're applying and sending out resumes and just to keep up with who you need to contact, who you don't need to contact. Please like this video if you found it to be good content. If you have any comments, suggestions, questions, please feel free to use the comment box below this video to give me suggestions, give me feedback. If you have any ideas of videos that you would like to see that pertain to job search, by all means, please leave me a comment. I'd love to read them. I am building my page. I want to give good content, so if my users have ideas, by all means, I would like to hear them. And thank you for watching the video.